Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here for another What's Dehydrating This Week video, which means you're going to get 3 current videos in the same week. So you're getting a gardening video, a this and that, and a dehydrating video. So those are the ones I try to get up within a few days of actually shooting the video. Unlike my other videos that are at least 3 weeks old from the time they shot to the time they publish, but most of them now are like 4, 5, even 6 weeks out. So anyway, let's talk about what's going on. So if you just watched my garden update video, I was showing my rhubarb in there, which literally is this tall. And so I'm only 5 foot. So it's about 3 feet tall. And this is, these are just some of the stalks that I took off of there. I have tons out there and there's no way I'm going to be able to preserve all that this year because I still have a lot both in dehydrated and frozen form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dehydrate a lot of this. Now the thing about rhubarb is we typically like to combine it with other fruits for making jams, pies, and so on, but usually those fruits aren't ready for use until much later than when the rhubarb is ready to start harvesting. And you know, it's good to get out there and start working on it right away. Now I don't recommend taking out more than, depending on the size of your rhubarb plants and their age, I don't really recommend taking out 3 or 4 stalks. For the size mine are, I'm going up to 4 stalks per plant. When they were smaller, I would only take out 2 at a time, give it time to grow a little bit, and then take out a couple more. But my plants are huge, and there's no way, we don't even use all the rhubarb I put up, even when my plants were smaller. Now, I do like having some frozen rhubarb on hand, but dehydrated rhubarb works great for making jams or using in anything else you're going to use it in. Now, if it's something I want to use in a pie, I'm either going to get it fresh from the garden or I'm going to get my frozen rhubarb out. But if you're going to make a jam out of it, dehydrated rhubarb is great for that because you just cook it a little bit and it just softens right up, even without blanching first. So I went ahead and set those stalks aside because I still got to rinse them and break the leaves off. Now normally what I do with my rhubarb when I harvest it is I break the leaves off out in the garden and just throw them down in the garden, especially in any areas. I don't want to cover up any vegetables, any young plants that are growing, but throwing it around your rhubarb or other plants, or even on top of areas where you're trying to kill some grass and weeds, go ahead and throw those leaves on there. Not only will they help kind of inhibit the grass and weed growth, then they will break down and also feed your garden. So I do recommend doing that. I only brought those in as is just so I could show you how big they're getting. I have a couple of stalks here that I've already rinsed and broke the leaves off. So I'll show you how I cut these up. Now again, I do not blanch. It's recommended. I remember when I first decided to try dehydrating rhubarb, I looked around and found sites that said it was recommended you blanch it first. I tried that and said I'm never doing it again. So the next time I tried dehydrating it, I just cut it up raw, put it right on the dehydrator, and much better. It's a lot easier to do. It's quicker. It dehydrates just fine, and it doesn't turn to mush on your dehydrator racks and then stick to everything. That was the thing that really bothered me, is how badly it stuck to my racks. And so this way it comes right off the racks, and just by cooking it a little bit, it does not take long, it rehydrates up beautifully. So there's no need to blanch it first. So let me go ahead and start cutting these up so you can see how thin I've cut them. I do have videos out on this, but you know, there's always new people and sometimes videos get missed or forgotten. So this is about the size I like to cut the rhubarb when going on my dehydrator racks. But if you prefer to have bigger chunks, then yes, you can cut it thicker. Just keep in mind it's going to take much longer for it to dry. And I always cut these 2 ends off. I don't cut my rhubarb, I pull it carefully. You want to get your hand down close to the base and then gently pull on it until it comes out. Sometimes you can rock it a little bit to help ease it along. If you're careful, otherwise you might bust the rhubarb stalk in half while you're doing that, but if you're going to cut it up anyway, that really doesn't matter. So anyway, just throw the rhubarb on there like that and spread it out. I'll go ahead and finish filling up this tray. I'm going to have several trays to do. Okay, so there's one tray. You just want to try to get them spread out well. I don't spend a lot of time making sure they're perfectly placed because they will shrink up considerably while they are dehydrating, and you can always go back and check them and spread them out some more while they're doing that. Now, what I'm going to do, since I'm going to be only using one of my dehydrators today because we don't have a lot of sun today, so I don't want to run 2 or 3 dehydrators at a time on our solar power and really drain our batteries down. So I'm just going to run the one dehydrator, and what I'm going to do is I'll be putting the rhubarb on the top. So I'll do at least 2 or 3 trays on the top, and then the herbs I'll put on the following trays down below. It just depends. Now I may, if the sun does end up coming out, because it's still early enough that could happen, I may go ahead and start another dehydrator and then put the rhubarb on a separate dehydrator so I can turn the heat up a little bit higher. But when you're using a single dehydrator like I'm going to start with, and you're wanting to do something like rhubarb or some other fruits or vegetables that can take a higher heat, which is better so it dries faster, at the same time as drying herbs like the horehound I have here, then if you put, and you got a dehydrator like mine, put the things that take longer to dry or need a higher heat closer to the heat source. So the heat on all my dehydrators is from the top, so that those things go on the top trays, and then the herbs go down the bottom. So then I can have the heat at 115 for drying the rhubarb, and then by the time the heat gets down to the more delicate herbs, I don't have to worry about them overheating that way. So I mentioned the horehound, so that's something else that I'm doing. I'll put that there. And then the other thing I'm just starting to do recently is the comfrey. And I brought this in just to show you. When I'm harvesting comfrey, I don't dry all this part, but I like to break these flower buds off when I'm trying to get a lot of comfrey leaves, because once it starts blooming, your comfrey leaves are going to, and this is going to apply to almost any herb, except for dandelion, the comfrey leaves will start getting smaller and smaller as it puts all the energy into making the flowers. So I like to break these off and just throw them down into the garden, because the comfrey is an excellent fertilizer and excellent chop and drop. Anyway, I just throw the comfrey. You might want to check, especially since some of my comfrey is growing under trees, make sure there's no bird poo on them. Now when I'm making a tea, I'm only going to use the leaves, but if I'm making a soak, I would go ahead and throw this thing into a soak. So I did 2 years ago, I broke one of my toes, and I was making a soak using comfrey and some other herbs, and I did a video on that I'll go ahead and link to down below. Comfrey is really excellent at helping to heal sprains and breaks, so that's why it's often called knit bone or bone knit. I think of it more as bone knit, but I think it's called knit bone is one of the common names for it. I'm not going to go on and on about comfrey because I have a separate video just about that, but since that video I have started using it in teas, as some of you know, and just a little bit mixed in with my peppermint or whatever herb tea I'm making. I'll put 1 or 2 small leaves in there. If they're a bigger leaf like this, which this isn't a huge leaf, this is just a medium size, but once they get to be about this size, I'll use maybe just 1 in there. And then if it's a huge leaf, which I don't have any really huge leaves yet, they'll get pretty big, especially if you keep those flower stalks broken off of there. So, or you can just cut the whole plant all the way back and it will grow right back again. I believe you can have that thing come back 3 to 4 times, so you can hack it all the way down and it will keep coming back. I usually just go out there and just kind of pick leaves here and there. That's just the way I do it. So as you can see, I stack it a little bit high. Now comfrey has a tendency, especially when you're using this fabric, because it's kind of almost like Velcro, it kind of wants to stick to the fabric. So once it's dried, you know, you might have to sort of peel it off there, but it's just because of the texture of the leaves is all. But you can pile them fairly high like I do with most of my herbs, and they'll still dry really well. The part you may have to concern yourself with is when I get the really huge leaves and this center part is really thick, a lot of times I'll just rip most of that out. I'm not doing that with any of these because these aren't that bad. And then when you dehydrate it, if the leaves are fully dry and you still have that centerpiece is still not fully dry, just strip the dry part of the leaf off that stem, and then you can use that stem in tea if you want, or you can just compost it, because again, it's really great for the garden. Okay, so those are the 3 things that are going on the dehydrator today. But other things I've been dehydrating on a regular basis, including this week, is of course my dandelion flowers. They're finally starting to slow down in flower production because now they're putting out some big leaves. It's funny to me how dandelions are opposite from the other herbs. The dandelions start putting out a whole bunch of flowers while the leaves are real small, so you harvest the flowers first. And then you start harvesting the leaves. So I'm getting into that time where I'm going to start working on dehydrating up the leaves to go in my mixed greens blend. So, and then peppermint, my peppermint's doing really good. I've been able to start dehydrating this. I've actually dried up more than this. Often what I'll do, and I realize this doesn't make sense, it's just what I do, is if I already have an open jar from last year that I'm working through for tea, I'll end up topping, once the peppermint's coming in fresh, the first stuff that I dry, I'll top off this jar just to get it packed full again. And then the rest of my teas through the season while it's growing is all made from fresh peppermint. And then the rest of the peppermint I dry up goes into new and labeled jars. And I try to put up a lot because we go through a lot of peppermint tea through the winter, and of course we're using the dried peppermint for that. And here's my comfrey so far from this year that I've been drying. Actually, I haven't dried all this year. There's a little bit in here that was from 2020. It was from the very last jar of comfrey I'd started to dehydrate and then didn't do anymore. So I'm going to finish, I do that quite often. I'll just add 2020 to 2021 on there, and that'll be after I finish going through the 2020 comfrey. Then that will be the next jar I'll use, and then the 2021. So hopefully, I'm hoping to get quite a few jars because comfrey does have a lot of uses for skin and all that, and I've been using every year. I seem to find more uses for it and use it a lot more, so I dehydrate up a lot more. And then the other thing I've been trying to do a lot, because I should have been on this sooner, but now some of my valerian plants are already starting to get their flowers, so that means they're not putting out as many leaves or as big of leaves, and I wish I would have been staying on top of it. Just so much stuff going on. But anyway, I have this jar. It's hard to see because I'm putting the valerian leaf, as it is a more delicate herb, into one of my amber jars, and it's about 3/4 of the way full right now. So hopefully I can get enough leaves to top that off before it just all puts everything into making the flowers and the seeds. So at least I can have one more of those jars on hand. I do have lots of valerian root that I bought years ago, but I find I like the valerian leaf tea. It works to me just as well as the root. It's not as potent, so you'd have to use a little bit more than the root, but it also has a better flavor. It's very calming, very relaxing, but doesn't make you sleepy. It'll help you sleep without making you sleepy. So I know that sounds funny, but you can have it early in the day and it's not going to make you drag. But if you're, if you're very anxious and got a lot going on and you just kind of need to calm down, having a little bit of valerian tea, especially the valerian leaf tea for the daytime, is really good for helping with that. So trying to get a lot of that leaf put up. So those are the main things I'm dehydrating right now. Next week, I'm sure it'll be something different. I'm going to have to get going on my sage and my oregano soon, and many other herbs that are coming in and really starting to take off. Well, I hope you enjoyed my dehydrating video for the week, and go ahead and share with us down below what you're dehydrating this week. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.